along with shovels, pails, dump trucks, and other heavy machinery. Heavy machinery in miniature and made of brightly colored plastic. The kids loved it, and they didn't seem to mind the heat, although Ronald had put up umbrellas to keep everyone shaded, and jugs of water were kept on hand. The real construction site was surrounded by a 6-foot-high chain-link fence to protect passers-by from falling into the enormous hole dug into the base of the lighthouse tower. I couldn't imagine being one of the workers, wrapped in their heavy construction gear and safety vests in this heat. Over the winter, a large crack had appeared in the stone walls of the lighthouse that gives our library its name. To our horror, the crack began slowly, ominously to spread. When Grimshaw Construction checked it out, they told us a massive amount of work would be required to keep the historic old building from collapsing around our ears. The job was highly specialized and hugely expensive, and we'd feared that without a lot of money we didn't have, the library would be forced to close. But the library community and the citizens of Nags Head, North Carolina, had come through, and we'd raised enough to get the job done. Work began last week and, so we'd been told, was proceeding well and on plan. Scaffolding covered the eastern wall of the lighthouse tower, and an enormous hole chewed into the earth at its foot. At this moment, all work had stopped, even in the children's zone. The workers, the adult ones, stood in a circle staring into the hole. Their machinery had fallen silent. The kids watched them, shovels in hand, hard hats on heads. One little guy was enjoying a snack from the lunch pail his mom had provided. "What's happening?" Louise Jane McCon, today's playground volunteer, asked. "No one will tell me anything." Bertie didn't answer. She picked her way across the lawn and through the gate in the fence. Ronald, Charlene, Louise Jane, and I, along with all the patrons, adults, and children, followed. George Grimshaw, the construction boss, turned to us with a scowl and put his hands on his hips. "This isn't a community picnic, people. I sent for Bertie, not everyone in town." He might not have spoken for all the attention anyone paid him. George was in his 60s, a giant of a man with a heavy black beard, big round belly, and scratched and scarred hands. He was a tyrant on the job site. The men who worked for him admired and respected him and jumped when he told them to. But to everyone else in the community, he was just George, whose bark was a great deal louder than his bite. Taking care to avoid hitting our heads on the scaffolding or falling into the hole, we gathered around. Ronald tried to keep the children back, but in that he got no help from Louise Jane, who pushed her way to the front and peered into the dark depths. "What do you want to show me?" Bertie asked. George handed her a yellow hat. She threw up her hands in horror and stepped back. "I'm not going down there." "You need to see," he said. "You can tell me," she said. "Please don't say it's worse than you estimated." "No problem with the job," George said. "All's going according to plan on that front. You need to see what we found for yourself. You're the boss lady." "I manage the library, but I'm not the owner. Perhaps we should contact the library board or get a representative of the town out here." George grumbled something about political interference. "Before calling anyone," Charlene said, "we need to know what we're dealing with. It might be nothing." "If it's nothing," Bertie said, "then I don't see why—" "Time is money," George said. "My men are getting paid while they're standing around watching us yammer." The men didn't look entirely unhappy at the forced break. They pulled out bottles of water or granola bars and wiped sweat off their brows. "Can't you just tell me?" Bertie said. George didn't reply. Zach shifted from one foot to another. Zach, short and scrawny, was George's son. Except for the identical eyes and chin, the two men couldn't have been more different physically.